Welcome, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into vulnerability and shame through the lens of Brené Brown's amazing book, Daring Greatly.
And to really get a good grasp on this, we'll also be weaving in some extra insights from her blog posts and a sprinkle of relevant academic research, too.
Sounds good. So, right off the bat, Brown really flips the script on how we usually think about vulnerability.
She challenges that common misconception that it's about weakness.
Exactly. Instead, she shows how it's actually,
The absolute heart of courage and authenticity. It's the birthplace, if you will.
I like that.
It's also, get this, the wellspring of those deep emotions we all crave, like love and belonging and joy.
Now, that's powerful. And it really makes you reconsider how we often try to avoid vulnerability like the plague.
Right, because we're terrified of judgment and that lurking feeling of shame.
Okay, so let's talk about shame for a sec. Brown paints a pretty vivid picture of it, describing it as,
The fear of disconnection, feeling like we're just not worthy of love and belonging.
oof, that hits home.
Mm.
And she doesn't shy away from sharing her own struggles with shame.
Absolutely. Like that time she accidentally hit reply all on an email and
Oh, no.
yeah, talk about a shame attack. It really highlights how these things can pop up even in the most everyday situations.
It's kind of comforting to know that even someone like Brené Brown experiences that kind of thing.
Totally. And she actually turned to expressive writing to cope, drawing on the work of psychologist James Pennebaker.
Who found that writing about tough experiences can be incredibly therapeutic.
It's like getting those feelings out on paper can help us process and heal.
Now, back to vulnerability for a moment.
Okay.
Daring Greatly also delves into our culture's obsession with.
Never enough. This idea that we constantly need to be more, do more, achieve more.
It's exhausting.
Totally. And it creates this pervasive sense of scarcity where we're always comparing ourselves and coming up short.
Always striving for that unattainable ideal of extraordinary.
It's not about everyone having a narcissistic personality disorder, but this fear of being ordinary. It's so deeply ingrained in us.
Brown is a master at debunking myths. And one of the biggies she tackles is,
I don't do vulnerability, or the idea that we can somehow just opt out of it.
like it's some kind of optional activity.
Right. But she brilliantly points out that vulnerability is woven into the very fabric of being human.
We can't escape risk or uncertainty or emotional exposure.
Exactly. Even Brown herself, despite being a researcher on the topic, had to confront her own vulnerability big time during that now famous TEDx Houston talk.
You know, it's kind of amazing to think about how that one talk launched this whole global conversation about vulnerability.
It's a testament to the power of being open and honest, even when it feels scary.
And it perfectly embodies the whole message of daring greatly.
Absolutely. Stepping outside our comfort zones and embracing the unknown, that's where the real growth happens.
So it's not just about masking those uncomfortable feelings, but getting to the root of why we're feeling that way.
Exactly. And Brown doesn't just focus on individual shields, she also explores broader societal ones.
Okay, like what?
Well, she talks about this Viking or victim mentality that can crop up.
Viking or victim? That sounds kind of intense.
It is. Basically, in a culture of scarcity, we feel like we have to be one or the other.
So either we're dominant and aggressive like a Viking raider,
Or we're constantly feeling targeted, powerless, like a victim. And it really limits our ability to grow and connect.
it's like we're locked in this constant power struggle. No room for empathy or collaboration.
Precisely. And this can seep into every aspect of our lives. Work, relationships, you name it.
It sounds like a pretty toxic cycle to get stuck in.
It can be.
Hmm.
Now, Brown also dives into this idea of letting it all hang out and how it's not the same as genuine vulnerability.
There's a difference.
Oh, yeah. She breaks down a couple of ways this can manifest. One is what she calls floodlighting.
Floodletting.
Yeah, think of it like oversharing personal info, often to ease our own pain or force a connection with someone.
So it's like using vulnerability as a weapon, almost.
In a way, right, or a shortcut to intimacy. Then there's the smash and grab.
Okay, that sounds even more aggressive.
That can be more manipulative. It's when we bulldoze over people's boundaries, unloading all this intimate stuff on them.
Just to grab their attention and energy.
Exactly, a desperate attempt to connect, but it usually backfires and pushes people away.
So how do we avoid falling into these traps?
Well, Brown suggests being really intentional about our sharing, setting healthy boundaries.
And making sure it's coming from a place of genuine connection.
Right. It's about respecting others and being mindful of how our words might impact them.
Makes sense. Now, there's another defense mechanism Brown talks about. Serpentining.
Ah, Yes, the art of avoidance.
Always dodging those vulnerable conversations.
Constantly shifting direction, never staying in one place long enough to get real.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. Brown actually compares it to a scene from The In-Laws. You know that movie with Peter Falk?
I think I've seen it.
His character shouts, "Serpentine, shell!" as he and Alan Arkin's character are trying to escape danger.
I can totally picture it. That frantic energy of trying to outrun vulnerability.
Exactly. And the key to counteracting that is slowing down, being present, and moving forward with intention,
Even when it's uncomfortable.
especially when it's uncomfortable. That's where the growth lies. Now, from here, Brown shifts gears to how all this applies to different areas of our lives, starting with leadership.
So how does daring greatly play out in the workplace?
Well, Brown argues that leaders really need to embrace vulnerability themselves.
Lead by example.
Exactly. They need to model authenticity and create a culture where feedback is welcomed, mistakes are seen as learning opportunities.
So moving away from that blame and shame cycle.
Absolutely. Creating an environment where people feel safe to take risks and grow.
And what about addressing shame in the workplace? How can leaders tackle that?
It's about making sure people feel seen, heard, valued, fostering a true sense of belonging where everyone has a voice.
It sounds like leading with empathy and compassion are key.
Couldn't have said it better. And Brown stresses that leaders should actively seek feedback from their team.
Creating a space for open and honest dialogue.
It's realizing that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about empowering others to share their unique perspectives.
So moving from I know best to let's figure this out together.
That's the idea. Brown even provides this helpful checklist for leaders to use before giving feedback.
To make sure it's delivered with accountability, but also empathy.
And a genuine desire for growth. She really wants to turn feedback into a positive experience.
Not something people dread.
Right. An opportunity to learn and develop. She even shares some awesome examples of leaders who embody this vulnerable approach.
Oh, like who?
Well, there's Gay Gaddis, the founder of T3, and Christine Day, the former CEO of Lululemon.
They both achieved some pretty incredible things.
They have, and it really showcases how vulnerability can lead to innovation, engagement, a thriving work environment.
Makes you wonder why more leaders don't embrace this approach.
It's definitely a shift in mindset. Now, from leadership, Brown moves on to parenting, maybe the ultimate arena for daring greatly.
Oh, I can only imagine. So much uncertainty, so much emotional exposure.
Right. It's all about raising what Brown calls wholehearted children.
Kids who are brave, compassionate, connected.
Exactly. And she emphasizes how important it is for parents to show their own vulnerability.
To let their kids see that it's okay to not be perfect.
It's about modeling those healthy behaviors. We also need to teach our kids about shame and how to develop resilience.
And give them space to struggle, to face adversity.
It's tempting to want to shield them from every hardship, but that actually robs them of valuable learning experiences.
Brown shares a story about her daughter wanting to quit a swim race because she wasn't good at it.
And Brown and her husband, they really wrestled with that urge to rescue her.
I bet that was tough.
It was, but they ultimately decided to let her face the challenge head on.
And I'm guessing that taught her more than just how to swim.
Absolutely. It was a lesson in courage, perseverance, showing up even when it's hard.
That's so powerful. So it sounds like Brown's parenting philosophy is all about raising kids who are true to themselves.
And resilient, able to bounce back from setbacks. She also talks about how vital connection and belonging are for a child's sense of worthiness.
It's not about showering them with praise or making sure they never experience discomfort.
It's about creating a space where they feel truly seen, heard, loved unconditionally.
A sense of belonging that's rooted in authenticity, not achievements.
And she has this great anecdote about her daughter recognizing that feeling of being the other.
Even though she was considered popular.
It just shows how we all crave that connection no matter our circumstances.
It's a universal human need. So Brown's research on parenting, it's not about giving us a step-by-step guide.
It's more about offering a framework, a way of thinking about raising kids who are wholehearted.
Showing up with intention, embracing our own imperfections, and creating that deep sense of love and connection within our families.
Beautifully said. Now, in the final chapter, Brown circles back to those core concepts of vulnerability, shame, and wholehearted living.
Reflecting on her own research journey and how embracing imperfection can be transformative.
It's really inspiring to see how her work has not only influenced others, but also had a profound impact on her own life.
Shows that she's not just talking the talk, she's walking the walk.
She even acknowledges how her research took her down a path she never expected.
starting with connection and then leading her to explore these complex emotions of shame and vulnerability. It's like those unexpected detours sometimes lead to the most incredible discoveries.
Absolutely. And she tells this really touching story about a young man who was inspired by her TED Talks.
Oh, what happened?
Well, he decided to tell his girlfriend how he felt, but she didn't feel the same way.
Oh, that's rough.
It is. And his roommates even made fun of him for being so vulnerable.
That fear of rejection, of judgment, of being seen as weak, it can be so paralyzing.
It can. But Brown's work encourages us to push through that fear.
To remember that vulnerability is not weakness. It's the path to authenticity, to deeper connection, to a more fulfilling life.
It's about daring greatly, even when it feels terrifying,
Her work is like a call to action, urging us to create a more compassionate world.
both in our personal lives and in our communities, challenging those norms that perpetuate shame and scarcity.
And fostering a sense of belonging and worthiness for everyone.
Beautifully put. And she leaves us with this incredibly powerful message. Worthiness is our birthright.
It's a reminder that we are all deserving of love and belonging just as we are.
No matter our flaws or accomplishments, what a powerful way to end the book.
It really is. Brown's work is a true gift. It offers these incredible insights and tools to help us navigate the complexities of human emotion.
And to ultimately live more wholehearted lives.
It reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles, and that vulnerability, while scary, is the key to unlocking our full potential. It's amazing how her work has sparked all these conversations about vulnerability and shame, across so many different platforms.
It's really touched a nerve, hasn't it? I think she's helped shift the way we look at these emotions in a big way.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I was thinking it might be helpful to pull together the main takeaways.
I was just thinking the same thing, a nice little summary for our listeners.
Give them 10 key points to walk away with. What do you think?
Sounds great. I'm happy to get us started.
Awesome. Take it away.
All right, so first and foremost, vulnerability is not weakness. It's actually the foundation for courage, authenticity, and deep connection.
And then there's that whole never enough mentality that our culture often pushes.
Right, that scarcity mindset that leads to comparison, shame, and this constant need for external validation.
It's exhausting.
It really is. Now, point number 3. Shame is universal. We all experience it, but we can build resilience by recognizing it, practicing critical awareness, seeking support, and daring to talk about it.
And men and women often experience shame differently thanks to those societal expectations and gender norms.
Absolutely. Point number 5. We use all sorts of defenses to protect ourselves from vulnerability. Things like foreboding joy, perfectionism, numbing ourselves out.
But those coping mechanisms, they actually hold us back from growth and genuine connection.
They do. Okay, number 6. Daring greatly in leadership means embracing vulnerability, fostering a culture of feedback, and tackling shame head-on in the workplace.
And wholehearted parenting, that's number 7, involves modeling vulnerability for our kids, teaching them about shame resilience, and letting them face challenges.
So they can learn and grow from those experiences. Number 8, establishing boundaries, finding true comfort, nurturing our spiritual lives. Those things can help us overcome numbing and connect more authentically with ourselves and the world.
Number 9, understanding the difference between shame, which is about who we are, and guilt, which is about our actions, can really empower us to make positive changes.
And finally, number 10, worthiness is not something we earn, it's our birthright. We are all deserving of love and belonging just as we are.
Those 10 points, they're just a glimpse into Brown's work, but they give a really solid framework for understanding vulnerability, shame, and wholehearted living.
They do, and we hope this deep dive has inspired you to explore these ideas even further.
Definitely check out Daring Greatly and her other work. And before we sign off, I'd like to leave you with a little something to think about.
Oh, I love a good parting thought.
What's one small step you can take today to embrace vulnerability in your own life? Could be confiding in a friend, owning up to a mistake, showing yourself some compassion.
It doesn't have to be a huge leap.
Exactly. Sometimes those small, courageous acts, those are the ones that lead to a more fulfilling and authentic life.